Jerry?
Well, most of what's been happening to Pete Rose is going on in court and not on the baseball field, but that's where Pete is now, and Ken's here to tell us how things are going down at the stadium.
Reds and Dodgers began just a little while ago, last game in a 4-game set. Let's go to Tom Brenneman, who's standing by live right now. He had a chance to talk to Pete over the weekend. Tom?
Well, Kenny, today, as far as today is concerned, Rose was in a meeting for better than 3 hours with General Manager Murray Cook and his coaching staff. You get the feeling that a trade might be in the works in talking about baseball between possibly even the Reds and the Dodgers. We'll see about that a little bit later. Pete's not talking to anyone today, but yesterday he did get together in an exclusive News 5 interview with our lonesome George Vogel. Pete told George this whole mess has hurt his reputation and had a story to prove it.
Well, we were in L.A. Last week and a half ago, and we landed at the airport, and Jeff Ruby and his wife was with me, and my wife and my little boy, and we got in this cab, and there was an African driving, and he's been in this country for like 5, 6 years. And Jeff, I was sitting in the front with my son, and Jeff was teasing. He said, you know who Jeff Ruby is, a famous restaurateur in Cincinnati, Ohio? And the guy says, no, sir, I don't think so. He says, you know who Johnny Bench is? And the guy says, no, I don't think so. And we went about another 2 miles, and he said, you know who Pete Rose is? And the guy said, yeah, he's the gambler. And I said, yeah, and I'm gambling right now, riding in this front seat with you around this mountain here.
So obviously Pete Rose has maintained somewhat of a sense of humor. However, it doesn't all seem so funny when this gets going come July 6th. Live from Northern Kentucky, Tom Brenneman, News 5 Sports.
Okay, Tom, a trade, huh? How boring.
Yeah, baseball. Oh, well, we'll get back to you later, right?
A baseball commissioner, while everyone was focusing on the legal issues, Pete was keeping an eye on the Reds tonight.
News 5 Sports Director Ken Broo is down at the stadium with Pete tonight. He joins us now with a report on what Pete said.
It's been a busy night between the Reds and trying to read this thing.
You got that.
I can't remember what I've done other than that tonight. Through all this, Pete is trying to stay focused on the game. During the warm-up tonight, our photographers caught a glimpse of him, putting the troops through a little workout. And then later on, while the team worked on its first win in days. Now, when it was all over, Pete finally told reporters what he really thinks about this report.
No, it's such a biased report, it's unbelievable. But we'll face that. Because there's not a damn thing we can do about it. The laws of baseball are great, but they have to abide by the laws too. And we don't think they did, and that's why we went to court, because we feel he already made judgment. And me and my team evidently aren't the only people who feel that way.
Interesting change of posture for Pete Rose, who for so long said no comment and then was a little defensive, now seems to be firing back. You almost get the feeling that he feels they fired their best shot. Now it's time for him.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ken. Now, I talked with Pete's attorneys tonight.
Jeff. And Jeff will be back with more on the Pete Rose testimony at 6 o'clock. Clyde?
And, of course, this story is endlessly fascinating. News 5 Sports Director Ken Broo joins us now with the latest on the Pete Watch. Ken?
We have been following this closely, as you know, Clyde, as has everyone else, I think, in this country. Our Tom Brenneman is now down at the ballpark. Let's go live to him. Tom, what's the mood right now?
Mood is very relaxed, Ken, to be completely honest with you. I was in Pete's office for about 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes or so, a little while ago. He's very calm, cool, collected, as the old saying goes. Players, likewise. Music in the clubhouse, kind of kick back, taking it easy, getting ready for tonight's game, and they're more concerned right now about trying to make it 2 wins in a row than they are any of the outside distractions which surround them at this time.
Tom, you and I have done stories with players. We have talked to the players. They all seem pretty upfront in saying this isn't bothering them. But really, this has got to be getting old, I would think.
Well, I would think the thing that certainly gets old, if nothing else, is having hordes of just media everywhere you go and every time you come out to the ballpark. It was interesting. Tom Seaver had some comments on NBC this weekend about the fact that one of the most enjoyable things about playing the game is just the act of looking forward to going to the ballpark and being surrounded with your teammates. It can make it a little bit more difficult when you've got so many dozens of media people hanging around and trying to bring your mind elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay, Tom, thank you. Reds play the Braves tonight, 7:30 down at the big ballpark. Scott Scudder on the mound for the Reds. If we want to get into those mundane things, perhaps we'll wait until 5:50 when sports comes back.
Sounds like a good idea, Ken. Thanks a lot. As Ken said, the waiting and the wondering continues. We'll keep watching the story till it's finally done. Norma?
Well, now that the Pete Rose...
showing their support for Pete. Well, the fans do seem to be holding on to hope for Pete and standing behind him. News 5 Sports Director Ken Broo is here with the latest on how Pete is holding up in all of this, Ken?
Well, probably Pete would tell you today that this is so many issues now that he's been on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He has to count. It's like 15 or 16 or
Too bad he
something like
doesn't own
that.
stock or something, huh?
Well, yeah, too bad he doesn't. He may when it's all over. You know, Pete, throughout this whole thing, has said that he wants to do is just play ball. And although he's maintained his innocence for the most part, he hasn't said much. Our George Vogel, who is a man of many words, is down at the stadium where the Reds take on the Braves tonight. George, is Pete saying anything right now?
It's pretty much status quo, Ken. Before the game, as has Pete's done, Pete has done in the past. He hasn't said much before the games. Pretty much the case today. I saw him in his office just a few minutes ago. He said he didn't want to comment on today's court ruling, but he did say he was in no way surprised by what happened. What the people are talking about down here more than anything are the Reds' injuries. You know, Chris Sabo going on the disabled list today. That seems to be a bigger concern for Pete than the court case right now.
Okay, George, thanks. I hope you get a ticket and you can get in the game tonight, okay?
I'm working on it out here on the plaza level.
All right.
Okay.
We'll have more sports coming up later on, and of course, we'll continue to watch the ongoing saga that exists in the courtroom and on the playing field for Peter Edward Rose.
All right, Ken, thanks a lot. And we should remind everybody here that the game will be seen on Channel 5 tonight at 7:30.
Marty Perret.
News 5 coming up at 6.
Joins us now. He's been listening to a lot of the comments and is here now to share them with us.
Talk about deja vu, huh?
Yeah.
Just how many rulings now for Pete? It seems countless. We've had court rulings on Pete, it seems like all summer long. The whole legal battle starting to become as long as the season itself. And the arguments are becoming as familiar as the starting lineup. Now, here's what everyone is saying today.
Right off the bat, the reaction from Pete is pretty predictable. Here's his quote. I want an impartial decision maker. The rest is up to the lawyers. Today's decision doesn't affect me one way or the other. The other main player in all this, the baseball commissioner, Bart Giamatti, had this to say.
Well, I've always thought it belonged in the federal courts, and so I think that that's the appropriate place.
Is this a setback for Pete?
Well, I think it is a setback for Pete Rose in that it delays the issue of whether or not this is heard in state court. The interesting thing about Judge Holshue's ruling is that he has allowed Pete Rose's attorneys to appeal his decision.
When asked about that today, Pete's attorney, Reuven Katz, would only make this statement, and it's a quote. We have not yet reviewed Judge Holshue's extensive opinion. We will do so in the next day or so. Then we will decide on our next course of action. Meanwhile, the public seems to want this over with.
I think it'll get a fair review now that it's in federal court, and there won't be as much, let's call it community pressure, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
I think they're just stalling for time. His lawyers are just stalling for time.
I think that it should go to federal court. I hope that everything comes out as fairly as possible and back Pete all the way.
One more reaction we need to pass along, this from Marge Schott, who says she just hopes the situation is resolved soon and that the players and fans can get back to enjoying the game of baseball, which I think is pretty much a universal acclamation. How realistic, I don't know. It will go on at least until the 14th of August.
The amazing thing here is all this legal stuff has to do with whether and who's going to find out whether or not Giamatti is biased or not. None of this has to do with whether or not Pete gambled on baseball.
And it certainly doesn't preclude the deal that we've been talking about here tonight that may or may not come off before this thing goes back to
his.
If the charges are true, Pete could be kicked out of the major leagues for life. But the big story in Reds baseball today is an unbelievable amount of runs they scored in just one inning of this afternoon's game.
They scored 14, count them, 14 times on a major league record of 16 hits, all before the second inning even started. News 5 Sports Director Ken Broo joins us to show us how they pulled off such an incredible home run spree, and it was incredible.
It'll teach me to be 5 minutes late because I missed the first 4 runs. You had to be there to believe it. It took the Reds 5 games to score 14 runs this past week. It took them only 38 minutes to get the same amount of players across the plate today.
And there's another hit. For a team that's been desperate for runs, the Reds got a bucketful today. 18 in all, 14 in the first inning alone. Todd Benzinger had 4 hits, Jeff Reed had 4, and Ken Griffey drove in 4 runs, 3 here, and that ball is out of here. That ball is way out of here. It was 14-0 after the first inning. How good was it? The Reds not only batted around twice in that inning, every batter got a hit. In fact, 7 of them got 2 hits in that inning. And And the 16 hits the Reds had in the first inning, it broke a modern-day Major League record. And for the 20,000-plus who showed up today, this was like the oasis after a desert full of losses.
It was the best inning I've ever seen. It was awesome. Bing, bing, bang, one run after the other.
I'm enjoying it. I'm going back in and see the rest of it. I think they're just going to build on this. Real impressive, that's for sure.
Tom Browning went all the way to win it in the best day at the ballpark this season.
We'll have more on this game coming up tonight at 5:30 and again at 6 o'clock. The Reds still a chunk behind in the National League West, but a great day at the ballpark to say the least.
A couple more days like this, maybe they could make it up. If they put a burr under the Cincinnati Reds saddle.
Well, you know, the thing is the way those guys were pitching today. I mean, it was like Jim Lett out there, you know, at batting practice time, just kind of grooving them in. I'm not I'm not completely convinced that you and I couldn't have had 3 or 4 hits today if we were out there.
Certainly not you, Mr.
I could be convinced of that perhaps at a later date, but right now I'm open to anything. If I wasn't there myself, I wouldn't have believed it. But as we say in the business, the videotapes don't lie. 18-2, the Reds win. All I could think of sitting down there today was save it. I mean, cut it off at 10 and save it for the weekend. But it doesn't work that way, and so be it. It was a quasi-legendary performance. Ken Griffey, 3-run homer. Deep to right center field. You can kiss it goodbye. All right, we'll stay in the first inning. Jeff Reed, 4 hits today. This single to right. Orlando Rooms comes in and scores. The Reds are up 5-0.
It's just a lot of fun, you know. I mean, everybody's going up the plate hitting, you know, and everybody's joking around, having a good time. We're scoring runs, and it's just a fun time.
Still the first. Jim Clancy lifted after the Reds score 7. He didn't get anybody out. Bob Force comes in. He was awful, too. Still the first. Todd Benzinger laces the double down the right field line. Rooms, Griffey, Davis all score. The Reds have a 13-0 lead. They had 14 runs and 16 hits in the first inning alone. Look at the dugout. They were having fun. Even Pete was able to smile. Let's go to the 7th. Rooms here, and you can pucker and plant it because that baby's been kissed. Dead center field. Benzinger scores in front of Rooms, and the Reds are up 17-2, and Rooms was having a great day today.
Oh, we were like, Jesus, I got to slap somebody else's hand. And they just kept on going back and forth. It was like, you know, anybody make out, get fined. You know, we were having fun for a change. You know, it's been a long time since we can go out there and have some fun.
Tom Browning, he was aces. He went the entire 9, didn't walk a batter, struck out 1, gets Alex Trevino to fly out to right to end it. 18-2. Browning says with that big of a lead, all he had to do was throw strikes.
You know, you just try to go out there and do whatever you can. When you got that big a lead, you just want to go out there and throw strikes and get them out as quick as possible. And, you know, because I knew they didn't feel like they had a chance of coming back to win. And I just, like I said, I just tried to go out there and stay aggressive and throw strikes.
Listen to these records that went down today, okay? Major League records. Most hits in 1 inning, 16. Most batters with 2 hits in 1 inning, 7 Reds did it today. Most batters with 3 or more hits for the game. That ties a Major League record with 7. And the Reds set a club record today. Most runs in 1 inning. No Reds team has ever scored more than what they did today, 14. Now, here's another record they set. Most singles in 1 inning. They had 12. Major League record. Pete never saw anything like it. Never.
I think we had 7 guys get 2 hits in the first inning.
Yeah.
We had one guy had a chance of getting 3. Quinones.
Or suspend him for a year. There's no telling when federal judge John Holshoe will decide whether to stop that August 17th meeting. And that's not the only new development in the Pete Rose case. You can now buy yourself a copy of what Pete's main accusers say about him.
It's that article we've been telling you about, just out on newsstands in the latest issue of Penthouse magazine. Sports director Ken Broo is here to tell us how it's selling here in Cincinnati. Ken?
Well, I guess there is some truth that people read Penthouse for the articles. It's an article by Paul Jansen, who's got a heck of a lot to say about Pete's love affair with gambling. And now, as they say in the press, you can read all about it.
Penthouse may be a hot magazine full of pictures as far as some people are concerned, but at least one article in this month's issue is going to catch the eyes of a lot of Cincinnati Reds fans. It's finally on the newsstands, the article in which Pete's